Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Perfect. All right, well, let's get cracking. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. This is Startup Talent Q&A. I believe it's our 169th session. We've been doing these now for 4.5 years, and we've had over 280,000 people tune in. None of that would have happened without people like Emily and Laura. And so if anybody here, well, especially those on the live streams, would like to reach out, please feel free to do so. And if you like, ladies, to drop your LinkedIn URLs in the chat, that might be useful. On the other hand, maybe we can get started. So, what are we doing here today? We're here to help startups with whatever questions you may have in terms of your talent journey as far as your business is concerned, whether you want to get ideas on how and where to find the right people, and perhaps how to hire somebody, as in how to interview them, what to say, how do you decide what skills they should have, or maybe how to build your culture or empower and develop people. Literally, any questions related to your people, this is the place to ask it. There are no wrong questions, and there's no need to be shy. It's a learning curve for us all. And for those of you that are on the live streams, please be aware that unfortunately we are unable to monitor your questions there live. So if you do have any questions for us, you'll have to join us here on Microsoft Teams. The quickest way to do that is to go to our website, startuptoscaleup.club. You'll find today's session if you scroll down a little bit, and that's Startup Talent Q&A 169. You can click join there. It's a quick registration. That gets you a link to your email. And through that link, you can tune into our call. It's an audio only call, which means you can join from anywhere via any platform or device. And once you're here, all you have to do is drop your question in the chat. We'll give you the mic, and then you can ask our team anything you want in terms of that talent journey. If, however, your questions today are not on talent, please save them for the other conversations we run. Mondays, it's talent, as you see today, but then on Tuesdays, it's product and tech. Wednesdays, it's growth. Thursdays, it's fundraising. Second Friday of each month, it's UK startup law. And third Friday of each month, it's UK startup finances. They're all from 12 to 1 p.m. UK time. And they're all available on our site, startuptoscaleup.club. And actually, when you're there, what you may also want is to join our WhatsApp community. We've got some interesting groups with your fellow founders, investors, operators, our brilliant panelists and mentors that you can reach out to, send questions ahead, and all that jazz. So the way this is going to work today is we'll have a quick introduction. Then I'll ask the ladies for their main do's and don'ts when it comes to early stage talent. And then we'll open it for questions from the audience. And then we'll wrap it up in 54 minutes from now. So without further ado, my name's Anton Call. I'm an Albanian in London working with startups normally right after they get investment. I embed within their teams and help them hire and keep the right people. I also do some growth advisory work with a few other startups and accelerators, and help some angels and family offices with their due diligence and assessments. We'll go to Emily and then Laura, please.
Hi there, I'm Emily Coolin, and I'm a Canadian who lives in the UK in the beautiful Cotswolds. And I focus, after many years of building HR teams and companies through startups and scale-ups, I focus my time on teams and leaders and helping them scale, whether that's through the human side of things or the strategy or any of the other pieces. So I work as a leadership coach, a team coach, and a facilitator. I'm pleased to be here.
So yeah, hello, I'm Laura. I work with tech scale ups, generally smaller companies, sort of size from 50 to 500 people. And I get stuck in with the leadership team, helping them to adapt and change, ready to grow their teams, the strategy of growth, talent attraction, as well as how to keep the teams engaged and retained during that growth phase, because it's a big sort of culture transformation piece. So I tend to work within that. Many things are involved, as you can imagine. So, you know, skills matrices and all sorts of things, what systems, which automation, HRIS, AI rollout, etc., and leadership mindset. So very much class myself as a scale-up consultant, and work with some fantastic companies.
Amazing. Thank you very much for joining us today, ladies. When it comes to your work with startups and also what you've seen out there, I'm sure you've come across some horrible stuff, some rookie mistakes, but also some stuff that's been done well. If you had to pick one or maybe two each in terms of a do and a don't, what's most important to you? And if we can use different logics, i.e. reasoning for the do and the don't and not use the same one, that would be great. I guess we can start again with Emily and then Laura, please.
Sure. I think one of the biggest do's that I recommend to founders who are becoming leaders, so meaning they're hiring their first teams, sometimes ever, but sometimes it hasn't been a while. One of the biggest do's I have is that you must absolutely be clear on what you need and who you need. Don't be swayed by the shiny objects. Don't be swayed by even your board members or other people giving you advice on who you need to hire, but really do the work yourself. Understand who you need to bring on board, especially at the beginning. Those co-founders or those leadership team members or the key first employees. Know who's going to complement you, know the skill sets you need, the core skills, not just the flashy ones, and really, really do that work yourself. I think that's what I would say to start.
That's amazing. Thank you very much, Laura.
So my do's would be for people who are in scale-up environment. Do listen to your CFO. Do structure and look at your budget. Don't spend it too quickly. I've seen many companies now run out of money, get overexcited on a 10 million investment or something, and it gets spent so quickly. Make sure you're inviting in the right set of culture, and that you've set up ready for diversity of thinkers, and you've created a psychologically safe environment, so you're embracing that diversity. And you want leaders who are going to be comfortable scaling their teams, not leaders who want small teams, hand-holding, hands-on, etc. So you need leaders who are ready and prepared to change that mindset. Otherwise, they're always going to be burnt out. So it's that alternate, delegate mindset for the leadership team. I've seen so many companies skimp out on the leadership team and get inexperienced leaders, usually friends and things, that just don't know how to deal with larger teams and don't know how to delegate properly. And it's probably where I spent most of my time, is with the leaders and their mindsets. And it's a big difference. The last thing I'd say is everything needs to be metric driven. So you need to have your data points and keep an eye on them for every single function in the business for it to be operationally successful. So yeah, that is one of the most important things. I've worked with many large companies who you'd be surprised they do not have these metrics. They don't know where their return business comes from, or what percentage returns, or some like really basic stuff that's fundamental to a company sort of existing or not. So yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you very much from both of you. Really appreciate that. I think we can now go on to some questions. Again, just a quick reminder to those of you that are on the live streams, this is Startup Talent Q&A. It's our 169th session, and we're here to help you with whatever questions you may have in terms of that talent journey of yours. However, unfortunately, we are unable to monitor your questions live. Therefore, if you do have any questions you'd like to ask our team, you would need to join us here on Microsoft Teams, which is an audio only call. And the quickest way you can do that is by going to our website, startup2scaleup.club. Once you're there, simply scroll down a little bit. You'll find today's session, which is Startup Talent Q&A 169. Click join. It's a quick registration. That gets you a link to our, to your email rather. Gets you a link to your email, and through that link, then you can tune in to our call. Being audio only, it means that you can join us from anywhere you are via any platform or device. Once you get here, then please drop your question in the chat. We'll give you the mic and you can ask our team. We are only going to be here now for the next 44 minutes. So please don't leave it for last second, because we do often run out of time and are unable to help. Again, there are no wrong questions and there's no need to be shy, but we'll go to a question that was sent in, which unfortunately is becoming a bit of a trend. People sending in questions rather than joining live, which actually, it makes for much better conversations if you're here, and it definitely helps to get better answers because we can ask back and forth. But nevertheless, okay, that's an interesting one. Ladies, I'll put the question in the chat in case you'd like to read it too. But so one of 3 co-founders, they're preparing for a Series A. It's a health tech startup in Newcastle. And then she says, where we create AI-powered tools for remote patient monitoring. We're looking to expand our team, but face challenges in building our employer brand against larger health tech firms. With limited resources for employer branding, what specific cost-effective tactics can we use to highlight our innovation in healthcare, technology, and attract mission-driven talent? Plus, how can we leverage the early stage aspects of our startup as a selling point for candidates who are looking to make a tangible impact? Boy, that's quite a question. Okay, so I'm guessing employer brands with a shoestring budget and some kind of guerrilla tactics that you can think of, and also how can we kind of get people excited that it's a startup rather than an old rusty clogging machine of a matrix organization. Laura, you've unmuted, so maybe we can start with you.
Oh, sorry, I
right.
didn't realise it was a meeting.
No, that's
So,
okay. I meant to go to you first anyway on this, so we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Emily, if that's all right.
Okay, fab. So this is something I do with most companies. They don't usually have a budget for this. They don't usually have, a CMO with a nice marketing budget. The size of companies I work with. So sometimes they'll have a minimal budget, and I know a videography company who will come in and create some videos, but it's and they'll do that for as little as 1,500 to create 5 nice videos to have on your LinkedIn page and things like that, or your Glassdoor. LinkedIn, Glassdoor are easy places. Also things like Flexa, where you can advertise yourself as sort of a forward-thinking startup. Your EVP, so employer value proposition, is really important, having some flexibility and things to really attract that talent. But also, it's very much sort of the most important for any startup, attracting people. And this is something I did heavily with Human.ai, was the vision and the mission statement. So you've got some fantastic companies out there who have done this, and do this with your people. Don't do this in your little glass box of C-suite, because it just doesn't work. You need to get your people on board of what your vision is, and what positive impact you're having. So how you're contributing to the world and how you're going to create growth within your people. And these are 2 of the main things that people really look for, over salary, over benefits, over everything. They look for how can they grow and how can they contribute positively, people of today. So I'm always all about that vision, mission statement. Monzo, for example, have got a very good one for a bank. And there are many out there that they've created a fantastic statement that people will actually take pay cuts to come and get. And then get your people talking about it. If you can't afford a videographer, then just record it on Zoom and get some of those videos. People quite like makeshift videos these days. It's like non-professional is actually quite in fashion. And there'll be people within the company who'll be happy to jump on video and click a quick, 1 minute, why did I join? Or what have I enjoyed so far since joining? How have I grown so far? What positive contributions have I made, etc. These are really cheap things that you can do. And they make a big impact when it comes to attracting that top talent. This is probably where I work the most. So, and there's not usually a budget, but it's not difficult to do. So yeah.
I guess it's my turn, and Laura had some fantastic ideas. I personally have seen some really great success with some scaling companies who, like Laura said, go grassroots in a way, like, create those videos, create a bit of those things that it doesn't necessarily have to go viral, but have it so that when when your organization is searched, which it will be, you're going to be Googled ridiculously. So will you as a founder. But have some information about what it's like to work there. It could be a day in the life. It could be, hey, why I started or whatever it may be. But have some stuff that feels really authentic and real, that lives and actually breathes and acts like what you want it to feel like, as opposed to just, the posters up on a wall. I see a lot of employer brand success that is coming from scaling companies that are quite, they have to be managed because we all know that things can go badly or go south very quickly. But, put some stuff out there and have your employees put stuff out there. If people are proud to work there, they should want to, kind of brag about it. And I also follow the rule a lot with a lot of the founders I work with go and talk to your employees about what they're saying out on the street. What are they telling their nan at Sunday brunch about where they work? What are they telling their friends? It doesn't have to be anything polished, but it has to be authentic. So find out what they're saying and then utilize some of that in your own branding and in your own way to sort of advertise it and kind of have your company felt. So I think, there's a lot of formal things you can do, but some of them do cost a lot of money. But I think if you can go a little more grassroots, you can have a lot of impact.
That is amazing. Thank you very much, ladies. That's some brilliant stuff there. I guess we've got now 41 minutes to go, so we've got time for a few more questions. Again, a reminder to those of you that are on the live streams, whether you're on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram, please remember that unfortunately we are unable to monitor your questions there live. So there's no point in sending me messages, but if you do have any questions for our brilliant panelists, all you have to do is simply jump onto our call here on Microsoft Teams. Being audio only means that if you're like me, you don't need to spend 2 hours in front of the mirror beforehand, but you can join us whether you're cooking lunch in Liverpool or changing baby nappers in Edinburgh, walking your dog in Surrey, or working from a shared office with 10 hot desks in the city. So literally all you have to do is simply go to our website, startup2scaleup.club. Scroll down a little bit, you'll find today's session, which is Startup Talent Q&A 169. Click join. It's a quick registration that gets you a link to our website, and then through that you can jump onto this call via any platform or device for that matter. Being audio only, again, it's easy to navigate. And when you're here, simply drop your question in the chat. We'll give you the mic and you can ask our team. And your question, by the way, today can be on anything to do with talent, whether you want to know perhaps when's the right time to start hiring. Should you go for a fractional? Should you go for a temp? Should you go for your first few sort of full-time employees and permanent? How do you decide what somebody should have in terms of skills and experience and backgrounds? How do you decide how much to pay them? How do you interview them? How do you build your culture? Anything within that sphere, really, it's a go. So There are no wrong questions and there's no need to be shy. By the way, if your questions, though, are on other matters, please save them for the other conversations. We run Mondays talent, Tuesdays product and tech, Wednesdays growth, Thursdays fundraising. Second Friday of each month is UK Startup Law, and third Friday of each month is UK Startup Finances. That all from 12 to 1 p.m. UK time. And you can register to any future session via our website, startuptoscaleup.club. We'll now go on to our second question. I'll put it in the chat, but I'll read it out loud for the streams. And we'll go first to Emily and then Laura. So this is a co-founder of a pre-seed mobility tech startup in Manchester. They're creating an inclusive transportation options for the elderly. I've noticed that the pressure to meet development milestones is affecting team morale. Without formal HR structure, how can we integrate well-being practices into our daily routines to support mental health? Also, what steps can we take to build a culture of mutual support and empathy, especially when financial constraints limit our ability to offer traditional well-being benefits? I had to become a bit of a detective to find these people, and then once I found him on LinkedIn, it just said working on something. There was no sort of company, so I'm assuming they're still sort of in stealth mode. I have no idea how big the team is, but I guess we'll have to work with what we've got. Shall we start with you, Emily, and then Laura? What are your thoughts here?
Sure. I hear about, like the pressures to perform and development deadlines and things like that. It's very common, especially in really early stage startups. And to be fair, if it's not dealt with appropriately in the early days, it gets even worse as you scale and you turn into a bigger organization. It's about the culture. And in my opinion, you need to, as a founder, you need to be really realistic about what your timelines and your deadlines are. There will always be crunch times, especially right before a release or right before, some sort of product launch or something. There will always be crunch times. Manage the expectations of what those are and what you can do around those, but also manage your expectations in terms of your actual deliverables. Too many founders commit to things, especially to maybe an investor or whichever, that they may not actually be able to deliver appropriately with the development team and the resources they have, especially if money is tight. So I'm a strong believer in start properly, meaning manage expectations. You can still have a fantastically high performing team, but they won't be working the hours that you may think that they, whichever. Add a buffer of time, add the development delays as needed. And then once you're in there, have regular connection points with your team about how they're doing. Mental health doesn't have to be a massive big program. You can absolutely do that, but it doesn't have to be. Frankly, mental health support and engagement and making sure that your team feels valued and supported is conversations and listening, and then making not necessarily accommodations, but having some flexibility. So if your team feels that they are being listened to and that they are trusted to get on with what they're doing, and you're giving them the tools and resources, meaning whether that's time or equipment or whatever, they will perform. But they can only do that if you're managing expectations from your end as well. So don't ask them to do something that isn't possible without burning themselves out. So I think having the conversations, really, really being smart about listening, and then managing expectations to what is actual possible in the delivery of that development, especially for a product, is key. But if you don't start it now at the beginning, it's very, very hard to change as you move along. Those are my thoughts.
Yeah, I completely agree with what Emily said. And it's something I've seen a lot within companies, but that development piece that Emily said, sort of getting the estimations correct is absolutely fundamental, because if the estimations are incorrect, that puts pressure on the sales team, pressure on the development team, means they're unrealistic expectations, and everyone is working overtime. And quality goes down in regards to product, and that means you don't get return customers as well. So very much that buffer I would agree with. I've actually set up an estimation tool within AI that worked had a 98% success rate in regards to being correct, compared to humans doing it within the company, who just probably it was correct about 48% of the time and created so many headaches. So we actually automated the whole estimation process, which was great because everybody hated doing it anyway. In regards to well-being, it's creating.
Tell us more, Laura.
Tell you more about the AI thing.
Sorry to interrupt.
So,
yeah, tell us more if you don't, or you can do that after you've given your answer, whenever you feel comfy. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I do this a lot for companies. I create GPTs or co-pilots that will, for example, automate the stuff that I've usually spend a long time doing. So, for example, skills matrix, I'll create a coach who will do that one-to-one with the leaders, the same as this estimations. I'll create something that already builds in the buffers, that has all the historical data, that has all the historical mistakes, that can correct them, that knows how to create, sort of will spit out this beautiful sort of quote for the client. And yeah, we just found through checking that we've been able to get it within a short amount of time, much more precise than developers or salespeople doing it. And it just meant we didn't have to worry about it anymore. And that, for me, for tech companies, has probably been the biggest headache, our estimations. I've spoken to so many tech companies who just say that they're consistently incorrect, and there's not much you can do about it. Sometimes people have said to me, which there is actually, you can get it right, but just don't get your people doing it, because the most time they don't actually want to. So it just gets rushed and it's incorrect and is a headache for the whole company. So that's one of the biggest ones. But obviously, well-being, to create time for it, because sometimes it can be forced at people when they're already burnt out and then they're told they need to do a yoga session or a meditation session as well. Actually let people be outcome based, not time based. I create things like, introduce flexible outcome based working, make sure people are working the hours where they can actually, I call them hours of power, but where it works for you. So some people switch off in the afternoon after food. That's fine. Just like have 3 hours out, make up for it later. Obviously, it's more difficult with customer success and support teams, but it is possible. You can do it where it's like a layered working approach. And and then all these micromanagement processes for fear-based leaders who maybe are quite new to leadership or first-time round CEOs. I would say invest in good systems, reduce the micromanagement, reduce the amount of processes that record how people work. And you really want to be encompassing it all within the right systems that will bring in a massive return on investment for you. So for me, there are some amazing pieces of software out there that can help save time for people. And there are still companies trying to do everything in SharePoint or with some old archaic systems that they just need to bin off because it costs them so much more. They'd probably be my main sort of words of advice for wellbeing at the moment.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for that, ladies. Really appreciate that. Was some brilliant answers. And what have we got now? We've got half an hour to go, so I think we can go through a few more questions. Feels a bit awkward to answer questions from people that can't even be bothered to join us here live, but nevertheless. Okay, the next one, it's in the chat, and I'll read it out loud for the live stream. So, as the founder of a pre-seed agritech startup in Leicester, where we're using machine learning to improve crop yield predictions, I'm finding it challenging to retain data scientists due to our limited capacity to offer competitive salaries. What strategies can we implement to build a supportive, mission-driven environment that encourages team members to stay and grow with us? Additionally, how can we create a transparent communication channel to regularly gather feedback on job satisfaction, allowing us to address potential issues before they lead to turnover? And this can be really tricky because I've tried to implement sort of employee surveys both at very early stages and also much later stages, and it's a bleeding nightmare. How else and how do you go about kind of feeling the heartbeat of what goes on when it comes to churn? Maybe we can start with Laura on this, and then Emily, please.
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of Pulse survey. So that's just where you ask 2 or 3 questions each week, and You really want high engagement. So you want complete autonomy. You want it to be completely anonymous. And by doing that, if someone's got a small team, you're putting them into another team. And the leaders, you want the leaders to be involved as well and giving that feedback, because I've noticed with these pulse surveys, leaders won't give honest feedback and the people won't. But I've actually been in very refreshing people-led weekly calls that just half an hour improvement calls for the whole business, and you do a breakout, so breaking out into teams of 3, company-wide, so getting everyone together for half an hour each week, and it's about how can we improve things. And it's, you know, very much about cross collaboration. Where are your blockers at the moment? How can you improve? And it's creating that culture and environment where it's completely psychologically safe to turn around to the CEO and be like, actually, I think that's a really bad idea. You know, sort of, you really want that egoless leadership where I want the cleaners to be complaining, or not complaining, but, you know, speaking openly about something that they may feel is not working, and be able to have those conversations with C-suite and everyone just being humans at the end of the day. I've worked with some companies that just do this fantastically. And then I've worked with others who just the CEO talks on these calls and everyone's radio silent and not engaged, and it's awkward and awful. And those calls just probably just best not to be even happening, just awkward. But yes, it's very much about getting that engagement, that psychological safety from the very beginning, and just encouraging a voice from every person in the company, and ensuring that people don't feel punished if they disagree with something one of the leaders has said. Or so it's all about that psychological safety for me. If you can get it where people are actually speaking openly and it doesn't need to be anonymous, then you're really onto a winner.
So I would agree. I think so. Let's address the communication, I guess, channel first. You can't force a communication channel between employees and leadership. And every organization I've ever seen, big or small, that's tried to force it has usually ended up with more turnover and worse sort of results. So I think, like Laura said, find a way to do a pulse survey anonymous, ensure it's anonymous. I mean, spend a tiny bit of money to make sure you're buying a tool that is anonymous if needed, because if there's any suspicion that it's not, you'll actually break that trust. So do a pulse survey that's anonymous. Also empower your leaders if you've got, depending on if they're leaders of leaders or not, or, you know, depending on the levels, but empower your leaders to ask coaching questions and for them to ask the right questions. It may not open up right away, but hopefully in time, if they can be seen as trusted as well, they will create that level of trust and openness. Employees do want to share, but they're not going to share if they feel like there's a threat or that there's a risk of them sharing. So make sure that you kind of work with that. Also follow up with actions. If your employees do share, whether that's on a pulse survey or directly to you, if they're asking for something that is doable, give an action or at least a response. I mean, maybe you can't reply with more money as the first part, but tell them why you can't, and be really, really clear. They will respect the honesty, even if it doesn't necessarily get them everything they want. As for the attraction piece, in terms of retaining people like data scientists, you have to be honest that this is what we're offering you that may not be compensation in a traditional sense. Maybe we're offering you this because it's a really exciting environment. You will not get everybody, because some people need the stability of a better pay, or they want a bigger company that they feel is a little bit more, there's more forward or future readiness or something. But please be transparent. Don't try and promise something and then not be able to deliver it, because you will just damage your reputation. And especially with data scientists, it's not necessarily the biggest community. They will chat. So find the attraction for your company, find what that value is, find what sets you apart, and then act on that or own it. But don't, if you can't pay them their value, you have to expect that you're not going to get necessarily that many people. But do not promise them something and then have them leave when that can't be fulfilled, because you will have that turnover and that will damage you even more. So hopefully that helps. It is not easy to recruit a top talent, but you can do it if you set yourself up with honest transparency and have a value that they can see with. A final note on the attracting data scientists. maybe set your sights on people who are earlier in their career and they don't necessarily, you may need skill set, but do they have the core skills that you can grow, as opposed to somebody with X amount of years experience that may be way out of your budget. Hopefully that helps.
Oh, thank you very much, ladies. That is beautiful. Right, we've got 23 minutes to go. I guess a quick reminder for those of you that have just joined some of the live streams. This is Startup Talent Q&A 169. We're doing this every Monday to help founders with whatever questions you have in terms of your talent journey, whether you want to know how and where to find the right people, maybe how to assess them that they're the right ones, how to excite them to join you and hire them and accept your offers, how to do that right, how to get a process done. Maybe you want to know how to build your culture, how to get your employment branding sorted, anything to do with your talent journey, with your people in your startup. This is the place to be. We're going to be here, as I said, for the next, 22 minutes now. And unfortunately, we are unable to monitor your questions, though, on the live streams. So if you do want to ask our panelists anything, you'll have to join us here on Microsoft Teams. It's audio only, which means you can join us from anywhere via any platform or device. Best way to do that is to go to our website, startuptoscaleup.club. You click, you scroll down a little bit on that site. You'll find Startup Talent Q&A 169. Click join. It's a quick registration. That gets you a link to our website, to your email. And through that link, you can then tune in to the Microsoft Teams call, which is audio only again, and easy to join from any platform or device. Once you're here, simply drop your question in the chat and we'll give you the mic. If your questions, by the way, are not on talent today, please save them for the other conversations we run. So obviously, as you can see today, Mondays is talent, but then Tuesdays it's product and tech, Wednesdays it's growth, Thursdays it's fundraising, second Friday of each month is UK startup law, and third Friday of each month is UK startup finances. They're all from 12 to 1 p.m. UK time, and they're all available via our site, startuptoscaleup.club. When you're there, you may also want to join our WhatsApp community. We've got some amazing groups where you can connect with fellow founders, investors, operators, our brilliant panelists, and all that jazz. And actually, here in the chat on Microsoft Teams, I'm going to share now a link to a WhatsApp group we specifically created for the Startup Talent Q&A. What that means is that through this group, you'll be able to send questions ahead. You'll be able to discuss topics that we touched on during each Q&A, obviously connect with each other, and even get help post after whichever Q&A you sort of were tuned into. And that is, I've just posted that in the chat. But for now, let's go on to our next question. I think we can start with Emily on this and then Laura. So this is, two co-founders of, husband and wife, two co-founders of a pre-seed logistics startup in Manchester. We're scaling our business and looking to hire both full-time staff and contractors to support our growth. How do we ensure a seamless integration of contractors into our core team whilst maintaining a consistent company culture? Furthermore, how can we make sure that the contractors feel equally valued as full-time employees in this high-growth phase? You obviously want everybody to feel valued, but you also want to award people and make them feel sort of appreciated based on their inputs and loyalty into the company. So that can be quite tricky. Right, let's see what Emily and then Laura got to say about this. Ladies?
Thanks, Anton. So I think there's a lot of building blocks and foundational pieces you can put in place to ensure that there is a consistent culture. I'm a fan of start as you mean. So why are you doing the company? Ensure that there's a really clear North Star and purpose and such. And what are the values that go along with that? Now, values are going to be interpreted very individually. So you've got to make sure that you're okay if somebody is still getting stuff done, but their value interpretation is slightly different, that's okay. I mean, you're not trying to create, clones or robots. So I think, the more you can establish that from the beginning, that's great, with flexibility and diversity though. So especially if you are a husband-wife team, and I've seen this a lot, where you may have a really strong set of personal values, especially as a married couple or whichever, that translate into the company, that's great. But make sure that those aren't so locked in that they are crippling the organization. So there's got to be some flexibility to those values and that culture. Now, when it comes to contractors, uh, to say very, very bluntly, do not ever expect contractors to feel 100% integrated into a team. They are part of your team, but they're part of your team in a different way. They are transactional in a much different way. So if they have a fantastic set of deliverables and you're really, really clear on their expectations and you can include them appropriately in the company culture and some of the activities, that's great. But don't be surprised if they say no. And don't be surprised if they're not sort of bought in 100%, because guess what? They're contractors. They're not in the same headspace as your full-time permanent employees or yourselves as founders, nor should they be. I often see founders who get really, really frustrated with their contractors not being, kind of in the space and wanting to do all the company kind of events and stuff. Well, they're being paid for their time. They don't need to be bought in the same way. So yes, you can invite them to things, but you also have to manage your own expectations as to what those consultants are doing or contractors are doing. They have a deliverable and they are being paid typically time for money or project for money, and respect that. So manage your own expectations on that. That doesn't mean they are excluded. It means that you have to be okay with that diversity of thinking in terms of their purpose. Hopefully that helps.
Thank you. And just before we go to Laura, just to pick on that, Emily, if I may. So I've seen especially when talent partnering with larger companies rather than startups, I see a consistent almost process where contractors are often treated as expendable, pretty much like stepbrothers and sisters in a family, if that makes sense. And in startup lands, there's an expectation, like you said, that they should be as invested as full-time and permanent employees, and that doesn't happen. What's the easiest way that you've seen to kind of try and draw a balance between them not being expected to be all in, but also at the same time not being shunned? Is there any decent tricks up there?
Yeah, I think really just transparency and clarity. Everybody has a role to play. And if everybody's clear on what those roles are, you can comfortably say, hey, this person's role is to deliver on A, B, C, D. Again, doesn't mean that they're being like second-class citizens and being put to the side. They can still very much be included as appropriate and invited to things. But it's more just managing the expectation, because I see sometimes leaders get frustrated with their contractors not jumping on to the team events and the days off, like the team days and stuff like that, when maybe they've got other projects, maybe this is not their only thing. But I think it's a balance I think the clearest part you can do is to be really transparent about whose job is what for everybody, not just the contractors. And then make them feel that they are included and that their opinion counts and that they are a part of it, but just be mindful not to force it.
I hear you. Thank you very much. Laura, what would you do here?
So I really like the fact that they're asking this question. I've come across companies who treat contractors extremely separately, and the contractors will just go in and do what's asked of them because they don't really feel like they're a part of it. I agree with what Emily's saying, where don't enforce the culture on them, but most contractors I come across, they want to have a little bit of an onboarding. Sometimes that's not even done with contractors. So, the onboarding about the vision, the mission, I think every single person who has a touch point with your business, whether that's an interview and they're unsuccessful, or a random person that one of your employees talks to in a pub, like they can become potential ambassadors of your business, and the contractors I don't see as any different. They definitely can become ambassadors. So I very much believe in a small onboarding for contractors, so they understand what the mission is of the business, as well as, you know, some of those key get-togethers that they can come and join the culture. And I don't mean, you know, every Friday when you're having drinks and things like that, but you know, the quarterly get-togethers where you're talking about next steps of the business and there's some sort of team building event or something. It's actually very good for them to really understand what they are a part of and what they're contributing towards, but also feel that they are welcome and a part of it, because sometimes they can be treated as expendable and you're just here, and you know, there's almost a jealousy of people feeling because they get paid more, blah blah blah, you know, sort of this friction, whereas I like to remove that friction. I know I myself go into projects as a contractor, and the companies I work with, I very much feel like a permanent employee. I get, you know, looked after. I go to their events, go to their get-togethers, experience their culture, and I'm not treated too differently, I would say. So I enjoy that process, and I think it makes me feel like a valued member rather than just being someone who's, you know, time for money, come on, crack on and get going type thing. So I think when you look after people, they look after you. So it's very much creating that experience for them, as much as you can. But obviously if they want to keep separate and there are certain roles where it is just time for money and they make it clear they want to keep separate, then, you know, you don't want to be enforcing that culture. But I think it's important that everybody has that buy-in to what the business is doing, and creating those ambassadors.
Thank you very much for that, ladies. That is brilliant. Really appreciated. We've now got 12 minutes to go, so I guess one more question, perhaps the last question for today. Let me put that into the chat and I'll read it out loud for the live streams. And then once I'm done, if you'd like to go first, Laura, and then Emily, please. So I'm the co-founder of a seed stage fintech startup in Edinburgh, where we build tools to support small business financial planning. We're expanding our team to include overseas hires in Southeastern Europe. Now, I wonder where. HR policies and practices should we set up to ensure compliance with local laws? And how can we build a strong company culture despite having a global distributed team? It'd be nice to know if these are contractors or permanent hires. But again, there are some brilliant agencies that I've come across out there, and also platforms like Deal, etc. But I am also aware, as somebody who's been on that boat, that they can sometimes be extremely expensive, especially if you're bootstrapping or if you haven't got much money anyway. You're trying to cut corners, and I've done that, unfortunately, almost every time I've dealt with something like that. It's a tough one. Laura, what would you do here?
So I've worked with companies where we've employed people through systems like Deal and having these external employment contracts. They do always cost you a little bit more, so take that into consideration. And what I like about global hiring for businesses is I've worked with two different types of businesses. I've worked with businesses who will hire globally to save on costs because, you know, some countries are cheaper to hire than others. And then I've worked with others who will pay them the same amount as, you know, a high-end person in the UK, and they basically get the absolute cream of the cream, best person for the job. And that has been extremely refreshing and wonderful to see. And they never leave because they're very happy. But in regards to creating a culture, you know, there are those systems where you can employ them and just take into consideration the charges, which can sometimes be 6 to 10% of their salary. So you need to take that into consideration. Take the law of each country. So I did this recently with Romania, for example. You know, you've got things like maternity, paternity, like very different sort of benefits that are mandatory to them that you need to make sure are built in, and it's very easy to find these things out. I mean, you can literally just do it now with AI and find it all out, or speak to somebody who's in the country. I've usually reach out to a HR director or something, because that isn't too difficult to find out some of the common law, employment law that's for that country. But when it comes to creating that sort of global engagement, I think having those, monthly calls where it's like an hour call, for example, and you have the breakout for half an hour, and you've got people meeting from different teams. You've also got the coffee and chat once a week, and you make sure that everyone's actually doing it. But 15 minutes where you're meeting someone from a different team, and that can be on, Zoom, Teams, whichever platform you use. These things work quite nicely just to keep that collaboration. And then the final one I'd say is a meetup once or twice a year, obviously keeping a good budget for it, so you can meet in a country that's cheaper. That the UK is actually very expensive to meet up in, but I found these are fantastic, where you do this sort of buy-in, and you get everyone to meet up for 3 days or so. Let's say it's Barcelona, Spain, UK, wherever you want. I did this recently in Edinburgh, for example. We had a budget of 50k, quite expensive, but we got like 180 people from all over the world in, and the buy-in that we got from people and the ideas, we really use that for training, blue sky thinking, presentation, next steps, team building, and we do that once or twice a year, and it was well worth the cost. It was fantastic. So that worked really well. The cheapness of having a remote first global team compared to that 50 grand, which is like one mediocre hire. Sorry, not mediocre, one medium salaried hire. Shouldn't say that. But yeah, is well worth it. So that worked really well for them. We were really successful with Global First Team. So yeah, that would be my advice to them.
Thank you, Laura. What would you do here, Emily?
So again, without knowing sort of maybe some context about contractors versus whichever, I think in this scenario, and I'm not to contradict my previous statement, but contractors, when they're distributed and don't have the opportunity to sort of, I guess, choose how engaged they're going to be when you're distributed, you don't, you're sort of there. You want to make sure that they feel part of something, that there's an impact, and they understand that what the work they're doing is. And same with like a permanent or a full-time employee if they're in different countries. Make sure that your messaging is super clear, regardless of language or time zone or whatever, that everything that you do can feel inclusive and that people can feel part of it. So if you're based in the UK, that's great, in Edinburgh, but don't sort of start your team meetings with jokes that are very kind of Scottish based or UK based or something. Like, make sure that there's things that are feel inclusive, regardless of where your teams are. Having team connection calls, having those one-on-ones, checking in, that consistency. I see a lot of founders who hire, just like you mentioned, Anton, for maybe cost reasons in different countries, and that can work, but that doesn't mean that they're any less sort of valuable or don't deserve those connection points. So I'm really, really strongly believe that whatever you want to do for anybody who would maybe be sitting at the desk next to you, you should be doing for the other folks. Especially if they're permanent employees. I love what Laura said in terms of creating and maintaining and protecting, almost like, very, very strictly protecting a budget for get-togethers. It doesn't have to be massive. It doesn't have to be expensive, but just having that face-to-face time is so powerful. And make sure that when you do that, you do it in a way that it does feel inclusive to everybody. So you're not doing it when it's maybe over school holidays, if you've got a lot of employees all over the country, or all over different parts of the countries that have different children's needs or daycare needs or whatever. So really be mindful of that. So I'm a fan of getting people together as needed, at least once a year, if not more, creating those regular touch points and super great transparency and inclusive language and how you're going to have the touch points and how you're connecting. Making sure that if there's legal issues in terms of the laws of those countries, that is again super, super clear that you understand them as a founder and as a leader. More so than, yes, obviously you can engage companies like Deal, and there's a lot of other ones out there, but you have to understand at least the basics of the law. So that if somebody's asking a question, you're not just referring them back to a third party, because that feels very disconnected and disingenuous. So it's a big step to employ people and to work distributed, but I think it can be very, very, very powerful. You're creating a diversity of thinking that won't be there otherwise in a lot of ways. So I say go for it, but take the steps to make sure you're very prepared.
Thank you very much, ladies. Personally, again, having gone through this quite a few times, I know it may not sound as very warm in terms of company culture, but one thing I wish I'd done more often is to initially engage people on a project basis so that both sides can see whether they're a good fit for each other. And then after that, make sure that you don't hire somebody straight away as an employee, but some form of a sort of a trial period, basically. You want to ensure that. And I'm really glad the ladies both brought up that company get-together thing. There's two companies that I know that are doing this really well, and especially, as you said, you are hiring in Southeastern Europe. These are some of the I don't want to, well, I guess I'll have to use the word cheaper places to get together and run things. But I, for example, know one of the people that used to join us on our product and tech Q&A on the panel. He's got 2 or 3 companies that work between the UK, US, and Southeastern Europe, namely Albania and Kosovo. And what he does is, outside peak times, he'll invite people from all of these places that they're working, from Ireland to the UK to, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, is Nevada. And I don't know some other countries. To meet outside peak times, he'll hire sort of 2 or 3 either beach houses or somewhere in the mountains and invite their employees with their families. And it's amazing. It's literally almost next to zero churn, and that's because of that connection that they get to build people, that they get people to build with each other, not just the workers, but kind of make it like a family thing. So yeah, I like that idea in terms of those get-togethers, and you can sometimes do it for way cheaper than you can think of. We've got 1 minute to go, so I think it's probably time we wrap it up. Would have been nicer if we had you ask these questions live, but I guess we've got to work with the tools we've got. So, Dora, you're unmuted. If you like, you can go first with some parting words, and then we'll go on to Emily.
Yeah, I would say my parting words would be, within the employees in your company, one of the best ways you can probably save money is to really get to know them as a full person, not just as what they do, but the full person that they bring. And the more you get to know them and their skills in and outside of work, the more that you can really develop them as superpowers and strengths and help them to really love what they do, and then automate and delegate the stuff that they don't enjoy or that they're not necessarily good at. I'd say it's probably one of the quickest, fastest ways to create retention, engagement, and more productivity and just happiness within the workplace.
I agree fully with what Laura said. And just to expand or say it again, ask the questions. Really be curious about what your team, whomever they are, need and want, and then be able to respond to those questions, whether with action and be able to give them what they need, or be able to say why you cannot. But if you can communicate, and I think a lot of leaders are scared to ask the question because they don't want to disappoint. They don't want to say no, but you have to be able to listen, and you have to be able to say no at times. But I think the more you can communicate, the better your team's going to be, the better motivated they're going to be, the better engaged. They're going to give you more in terms of performance, and not necessarily for less, but they're going to give you more. So ask the questions as leaders, as founders, as you're growing them, as you're hiring them, as you're promoting them. Just really, really be curious.
Here. Well, thank you very much, ladies. I really appreciate your help and absolute gems today. So thank you. Hopefully, we'll hear from you soon. We are 2 minutes over the line. So just before my parting words, a couple of quick things. Number one, this was Startup Talent Q&A. We do this every Monday, 12 to 1 p.m. We also run a few other sessions. On Tuesdays, it's product and tech. On Wednesdays, it's growth. On Thursdays, it's fundraising. On the second Friday of each month, it's UK Startup Law. And on the third Friday of each month, it's UK Startup Finances. They're all from 12 to 1 p.m. UK time, and they're available on our website, startuptoscaleup.club. All you have to do is just visit the website and find your preferred Q&A, click join, then you'll get a link to your email, and through that link you can join us. All our sessions are obviously recorded and audio only. Once you're on our site, you may also join our WhatsApp community. At the top and bottom of our site, you'd see a WhatsApp icon that you can click and then join various interesting groups of founders, investors, and operators, and of course our panelists. As far as my parting words are concerned, just remember the startup journey can be both exciting but also quite challenging. So try to have some fun in the meantime and be kind to yourself and everyone else for that matter too. Otherwise, hopefully you'll be able to join us tomorrow live here on Microsoft Teams. And again, remember, if you're on the live streams, we are unable to monitor your questions live, whether you're on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram. So best thing to do is to join us here on Microsoft Teams. Hopefully we'll see you tomorrow for Startup Product and Tech. Thank you. Have a great afternoon, and God bless you all. Bye-bye for now.
Take care.